For our podcast listeners, we have got a promo code which gives you free admittance into a 2-part series on October 1st and 3rd from noon to 1 Eastern Time. It is an event that Doug Morse and I are calling a failure forum. It's an opportunity for us with our decades of experience in strategic planning and execution systems for healthcare organizations, in particular for small and rural hospitals. We are providing this 2-part series, and a promo code, GUEST, GUEST, will get you to that event for free. It is coming up on October 1st. To sign up and use that promo code, use the link in the show notes.
We had 3 organizational-wide goals, but we were looking at adding another 2. So we have an access, employee experience, and patient and resident experience. And then we really felt that finance and growth needed to be part of our organizational goals because, we didn't typically talk about financials, but I think it's important that people know where we stand. We're a nonprofit organization. We've got capital needs in the future. It's important that we meet our goals, and we have to make decisions to meet those organizational goals.
Welcome to Culture Change RX, the podcast for healthcare professionals that are committed to creating a thriving workplace culture, improving the experiences of employees and patients, and ultimately unlocking their organization's next level of potential. I'm Sue Tetzloff, your host and co-founder of Capstone Leadership Solutions. Join me and my insightful guests each week as we share actionable insights for navigating the crucial people side of the business of healthcare. Subscribe now for a weekly dose of Culture Change RX. Now let's dive into this week's conversation where culture change takes center stage.
Welcome to another episode of Culture Change RX. And today I have a guest in the studio, and it is Ben Davis. And this isn't his first time here with us in Culture Change RX. We are planning to do quarterly episodes, and we have one under our belt. And this is an opportunity for Ben and Capstone and his organization, Glencoe, to be able to chronicle a transformational initiative that their organization has recently committed to, which is an evolution of an organization and its continuous efforts to grow and improve and just organizing in a different way and a different approach. And so he's here to talk about what they've been up to in the last quarter. And we'll start like we usually do with guest episodes where, Ben, if you'll just introduce yourself for those that haven't met you yet.
Yes. Well, thank you, Sue. Thanks for having me again. Appreciate your allowing me to be on here with you. My name is Ben Davis, President and CEO at Glencoe Regional Health. We just started our initiative back in May. So we're not even 6 months into our journey. But have really seen a lot of change in a positive way, and also some challenges, certainly with change management and something new to the organization in which we're creating alignment, which we've talked about. But it's a different way of doing things, and so as in any change initiative, we're going to have some challenges as well.
Yeah, and I think people want us to talk about those too. I love inspiring people with success and positive stories and examples of change. But I think keeping it real that change is a struggle for humans and large groups of humans and small groups of humans. And so keeping it real. So I'm going to link in the show notes, Ben, for those that might have missed your first episode where we talked about, kind of the why of your organization embarking on this new approach to improving and changing and growing. But since that time, your organization has set up some very structured teams that have some very specific purposes, and they're populated with employees. And these employees are now engaged in 1+ quarter into some real purposeful work beyond their day-to-day job description. Can you share a little bit with our listeners as to how these teams are taking off and what they're up to, and maybe some highlights or some key things that you're noticing?
Yes, yeah. So our teams are all set up. I think we talked about it last time that
Mm-hmm.
how we selected and we're very intentional about selecting team members by having their leaders nominate them to be on the teams. That was very successful. And since then, in some of the teams, we've gotten really deep into data.
I love
Because
that. Actually,
well, but also understanding that not everybody is really interested in digging deep into data. And so
mm-hmm.
we've got all of our press Ganey information from the patient surveys, and then also we do press Ganey for employee engagement surveys. So we took a deep dive, and that kind of some of the why got lost in all of the data.
Mm-hmm.
So we realized we had to take a step back and
Mm-hmm.
really focus on, okay, the data's here. We're gonna continue to talk about data, but let's now talk about goals and how do we get there? How do we implement tactics to achieve those goals? So that's where we're getting to. We're shifting our mindset a little bit away from an education phase because I like to
Mm-hmm.
talk that our teams are still in an orientation phase.
Mm,
They're
yeah.
meet they're meeting, twice a month, every other week. And for many, this is new. So just learning how to operate in a group setting, who are the informal leaders in the group, and identifying and achieving tactics to achieve goals is new to a lot of our staff. So we're in that
Mm-hmm.
orientation phase right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's such a good point about the data for folks out there that don't know that at Capstone, we've been assisting healthcare organizations in this way for almost 13 years now. And in the beginning, we weren't as an intentional right out of the gate, getting teams to get familiar with data and start to become what we would call data driven over time. And what we realized is if we don't front load that a little bit earlier, that sometimes it's harder to add it later because there's such a learning curve.
Yeah.
Right. And so we set the expectation and start the education and the learning and the exposure to that. And that can be a cultural change in some organizations where they haven't historically been transparent in sharing that level of data to all employees. Yeah, that can be the challenge sometimes, is just opening up that information.
Yeah, and I think, Sue, it's really complicated because when we get down to top box scores and percentile ranks and who's in that percentile ranking, and then you get an employee engagement scores and who's in your
Mm-hmm.
benchmark data, all of those questions get up, and we can get really deep into the details. Now, I love it, but
Me
I
too.
know it's not for everyone. So, and that's okay. We
Mm-hmm.
did we have a base, we have a foundation of
Mm-hmm.
knowledge around data that our teams have now, and so now they're ready to move on to that next phase of orientation.
Yeah, yeah. And as, objective as data is, and we really say it has two main purposes. It helps teams and even departments and entire organizations to know what to work on, right? And then it also helps us know if what we're working on is working. So if we're taking actions to improve the data, then we want to validate, is it? But beyond that, data being so objective, another thing I know your teams are working on is something that's probably the extreme opposite, which is very subjective, which is behavior standards. So we combined very objective data focus with setting standards that are really hard to measure how people are behaving and performing, and setting an organization-wide standard around how we behave. So I know your teams are getting ready for, I think, a commitment event real soon related to the initiative and your new standards.
That's right. Our commitment event is next week, so we are in the thick of it. Our steering team meets again tomorrow morning to finalize some of the last pieces for our event. So we're excited for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. This event is something that is kind of a symbolic ceremony in the organization that really draws a line in the sand to say it's a new day, right? We used to do things this way, and now we're all going to be on a similar course in doing things a new, better way. And like you mentioned, change is hard. And it's not like pixie dust will be thrown on everyone that day and through that event, but it does start the process of culture change and behavior change and concepts around this is how we treat each other, this is how we treat patients and visitors in this way that really is a standard for all. So that's coming up soon. Are the teams, have they prepared something really creative for this commitment event, or is that still a secret?
No, well, it's out. We're doing a carnival theme. Our teams chose a carnival theme, so there'll be tickets and those types of things, and events and games. So we're trying to make it fun. It will be a great time, and involving a lot of our leaders in that event.
Yeah. You'll have to send us pictures. A couple weeks ago, one of our other new partner organizations just had their commitment event, and all day my phone was blowing up with new pictures, and they were so excited to share. And I could feel the excitement all the way to Michigan. They were states away, but I could feel their energy and excitement. And so, yeah, please do share when you've got some pictures and some reports about how the event went. So I know your organization in the past has had some examples of having employees gathered in different teams working on different things, but this approach for this initiative kind of expands that to a much larger scale with more teams and more employees involved. Is there anything that you're noticing about the early months of these teams and employees being invited to participate?
Yeah, well, I would say, previously we'd have ad hoc teams, which, you've talked about many times that it's the administrative team and maybe a few directors and managers in the organization, and they get to make the decisions. Yeah. I think I've noticed just more engagement through our employees, our frontline staff, the staff who are, in each department, that they're able to be part of that decision-making process. So I've certainly noticed that. And I think even their leaders are starting to see that the growth in those individuals who are part of the teams. I think there's still some, how is this going to work? How is this all going to play out? We still have the whirlwind going on in the background, and we have to stay the course, and our leaders understand that. But I think we're starting to see the incremental change. And I think last week when we completed or 2 weeks ago, completed our leadership immersion, we saw just a big jump in our leaders being engaged in our journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we stage it that way, that we get the teams up and running, and you start to get that employee engagement in the teams and their action plans and getting ready for this big commitment event and some of the initial employee training that they're spearheading. And then we, layer in that leadership immersion, 2 days of training on 9 core leadership practices. And now we kind of have that 1-2 kind of punch towards increasing engagement and awareness and understanding about now the leadership standards, right? So you had your 2-day leadership immersion. So describe a little bit about how that went for your organization, Ben.
Well, it was new. We had not done a leadership immersion. We got over 35 leaders within the organization, probably more, into one room off-site for 2 days. We haven't had that many leaders outside of our organization at one time during a weekday. I don't know ever. Right. So,
and the hospital still functioned, right?
The next day when we got back, I said, it didn't burn down. There were some challenges, but the teams were able to address them in the short term so that operations could keep functioning.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So over the 2 days, your leaders were provided education on what we would call the 9 core leadership practices. That's really shifting leaders from day-to-day operations and management to really proactive, forward, improvement-focused actions to elevate their employees, their departments, achieve goals. Did you sense if there was some initial excitement around a certain leadership practice, or did you just think it was kind of general introduction to all nine, or is there something there that maybe was most interesting or that your leaders were most excited about?
I think at first it was more apprehension of, okay, what is this going to be like, right? Because it's new. But then, there were so many. And actually, what we've done after, we took the 9 leadership, leadership bundle areas, and we've been having our staff just do a quick report on what they got out of the immersion. And so what we've been doing is we've been passing the baton every morning to another leader for the next day.
Oh, that's a beautiful idea. Yes, yes. Are you hearing any themes of some common takeaways yet, or is it too early to hear that in your baton passing?
Well, I think elevating greatness has just been a
Mm,
part of our culture. I think people are grateful, they're thankful, and they want to
hmm
show that they're thankful to their colleagues and
hmm
the people and patients. And then I think also communication, improving communication with the departments, and then leading change,
hmm
because there is a change happening. And really, we're just adapting to the world that's going on around us so that we can more effectively take care of our patients in the long run.
Yeah, yeah. No, those are good ones. Improving communication is one that I know that that's usually a popular one because of how challenging communication can be in, I mean, we talk small hospitals, but it's still a lot of people, 24/7 operations with, different campuses and clinical and non-clinical, and we speak different languages, it seems, but it seems like communication is always something that organizations are in need of improving.
Yeah, I agree. And we feel like we communicate a lot because we have a whole document of communication channels that we have
Mm-hmm.
through all of these different systems. But yet, right, there are opportunities
Yeah.
for improvement.
Yeah, that's what we pretty much see everywhere, Ben, is no matter how good we get at it and how sophisticated we seem to get and comprehensive we seem to get with our communication plans, it's always an opportunity to. So there's somebody that says, I missed the memo, or I'm not in the know, or I'm not up to date. How did that happen? So, and then you're like,
Mhm.
so, yeah, I know when we were on site, for the first visit, one of the things we had a small amount of time with your leaders in that visit because most of the time was spent with your teams and getting them ready for their first year action plans. But I know one of the things that you're in the process of is what we would call a goal cycle, or for you, it's your QAPI cycle or QAPI cycle, and expanding that beyond just quality to other goals and other pillars or areas of emphasis like finance or growth or service and those things. So, any early adjustments or findings or things going on there that's notable, Ben?
Yeah, so we did a mini goal cycle. So from July through December of 2024. And I think what happened is we had really had done a lot of education on setting and achieving goals, which is part of the leadership bundle. And
Mm-hmm.
so we had a hard time getting into the mini goal cycle and setting those goals for that 6 month period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So we've really transitioned to looking at goal setting for 2025 as we get into the budget and aligning budget, strategic planning,
Mm-hmm.
and goal cycle all in, to prepare for the next year.
It really
Uh,
works good that way.
yeah, yes. And we had 3 organizational wide goals, but we were looking at adding another 2. So we have an access, employee experience, and patient and resident experience. And then we really felt that finance and growth needed to be part of our organizational goals because, we didn't typically talk about financials, but I think it's important that people know where we stand. We're a nonprofit
Mm-hmm.
organization. We've got capital needs in the future. It's important that we meet our goals and we have to make decisions to meet those organizational goals. as well as the patient and employee and access goals that we have. So they're all important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You mentioned starting off with a mini goal cycle. We always think about this when we're starting a new partnership and helping an organization with their goal cycle. Is it does work best if it's aligned with your fiscal year and you can, plan that way for a whole year. But we always don't want to miss that opportunity to have at least some lessons or learning and maximize even a couple quarters of time towards that. It sounds like you've had some observations, some lessons, some learning, some aha moments that we always say make the next goal cycle better than anyone before. So
I would agree. I think if we didn't have the mini goal cycle, then we would be ill prepared for our 2025 calendar to year goals. So I think it was important that we were talking about them, but then understanding that, hey, we don't have, our teams aren't quite ready for setting and achieving goals.
Right. Yeah. It's a process, really. And it's amazing how looking at some of our longstanding clients that have adopted this approach, maybe even a decade ago, it's amazing to see what happens to their goal cycle over time. It's just becomes so second nature. And they even forget that they didn't have one before. It's like, what did we ever do without one? It becomes so part and parcel to how you always operate and get ready for a new year. So, yeah.
I'm excited for it. I'm just excited for what it looks like in 2 to 3 years. And I think this is a long-term journey, which we've talked about. And you have to prepare yourself for that because it's not an overnight fix.
That's true. That is true. And nothing ever is really when you think about, complex organizations like healthcare and in leadership. It's not a role for instant gratification, is it, Ben? I know there's some things that I've done in my leadership where it's like, 4 or 5 years later, I'm like, there's the win. You got to be very patient.
Yeah, you have to stay the course, right? It's a marathon.
Yeah. So shifting back to leadership, one of the things that we recommend for your organization for that long game is that really we have our sights on your ability to become autonomous and independent in this, that while we have strategists, trainers, and coaches that are supporting your organization, that our real sights are on you becoming autonomous and independent in things like your goal cycle, your ongoing leadership development and onboarding, your teams being able to self-plan in alignment with your strategies and goals. And again, it's going to be a process, and we're going to chronicle that process over these quarterly podcast episodes, which is just a first time opportunity for us to do that. And thanks for being willing. But circling back to the leadership piece is one of those pieces that help that sustainability. And again, front loading that now, just like the team's front loading being more data driven, is front loading and being really intentional to have leaders raise their hand and say, I may not be an expert at improving communication or leading change or giving feedback or any of the core leadership practices yet, but I'm willing to raise my hand and be someone that really leads this for our organization and helps train, mentor, and coach my peers and future leaders. So that's a new concept, is what we would call peer champions. And they had their first deeper exposure to the leadership practices during the immersion. Any sense of how that's going? You didn't have a whole bunch of people like quit after the immersion. They said, never mind, I don't want to do that. Anything like that? Any observations or thoughts early on about that part of the initiative?
Well, we didn't have anybody quit after the leadership immersion, so that's good. I think with having this new process, you when you were on site here, you talked about innovators, early adopters, the early majority, late majority, and laggards, right? And so, we're seeing that also with our journey. Is it will take time to bring people on, and the quote you shared with us from Barbara Fredrickson, the negative screams at you, but the positive only whispers. And so we've been saying that over and over again. right? Where we have to continue on this course and engage, but there will be some late adopters,
Mm-hmm.
and that may be due to various reasons. And specifically for the peer champions, it may be that people don't like to get in front of other people and
Yeah.
and teach or talk about a specific subject.
Yeah. That is a big barrier. That is one of the things that probably some of your leaders that would be the best and the brightest to be able to learn the subject matter of something like leading change or giving feedback are the people that maybe don't want to serve in the role of a teacher or instructor or mentor or coach. And so we've been looking at ways to support these types of leaders to really develop those skills, because if they learn these skills to do this role as a peer champion, those skills can also be helpful for them in many other aspects of their leadership. So it's worth the investment, and also finding ways that, maybe they'll never stand on a stage in front of a large audience of their peers, but even being able to find safe ways for them to do this role where they can feel comfortable and confident in smaller group work or one-on-one work and still really serve the spirit of the objective of their role without causing them to say no to it or give up on it because they can't break through that other barrier of public speaking, which is, a fear of most people in the world. It used to be mine. I used to have full-blown panic attacks. So I've been there myself. So I've made it through that curve myself. So I know it's possible, but it's real for a lot of leaders, including those that raise their hand in your organization, said, I'll do this, but they're doing it with fear.
Yeah, I agree, and you're right. It's a learned trade. I think many of us weren't born speakers, but it took practice and a lot of uncomfortable times to get in front of people and to speak. So I think that's one piece. I think the other is that many of our leaders are really in the whirlwind. We're trying to get them out of the whirlwind, but they are in it and they don't feel that they could do the peer champion position justice, or they feel they'll because I think we've asked for two, they'll let the other person down because they're in the whirlwind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And your point about the whirlwind, the time when it's going to be the most distracting is in your early year or two of this initiative, because it's the work of getting out of the whirlwind and doing proactive work and improvement work that will calm that whirlwind down. So you're kind of fighting, that whirlwind at its biggest battle right now. And you're starting something big when the whirlwind is at probably the biggest it's going to be is at the beginning of the initiative, when you're asking everyone to get out of the whirlwind, to go to team meetings and to get out of the whirlwind and learn some leadership practices and go off site for 2 days. Yet that whirlwind is still humming, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think, we have to go upstream as much as possible so that our leaders can really lead.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're really managing right now because they just haven't had the opportunity to lead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love what I see when leaders get to the other side of this, where their proactive work starts to calm down the whirlwind and they have more time to do more proactive work, and you've made that shift. It's beautiful to see the transformation of individual leaders and a whole team of leaders when they kind of make their way onto that other end of the continuum. But it is a process, and it is like swimming upstream, especially in this first year.
And I want to say we have fantastic leaders. They are doing the best that they can, but we just need to give them the tools and the skills, and the knowledge to be able to move up, to swim upstream, to get where they can really focus on leadership.
Yeah, yeah. There'll be that moment where you'll go, wow, look at our leaders now. And you say, wow, we have this great group of leaders. And then later go, wow, we do. And now look at them. Like, now look at them. So it's wonderful to see the strengthening of your leaders over time. It's just wonderful. What about you as far as being the CEO? That's a big role in and of itself, is to be the CEO of a rural hospital. Now add, the hat that you're on the steering team and you're part of, the executive leadership of this initiative. Have you noticed anything in particular in your role and the things that you can contribute and do? Is there anything in particular, words of wisdom or things that surprised you, or things you're most proud of that is your role in this?
I think being a champion, we have our initiative champion, but really being supportive of that initiative champion and communicating effectively. So sometimes most of the time I'm the spokesperson for our experience initiative, our journey, but really being in alignment with our initiative champion, and ours is fantastic. And again, I said it before and I'll say it again, is choosing the right initiative champion is key to moving the initiative forward. I think that, and then I truly believe that during the leadership immersion, our whole leadership team was on the same page about how we address certain situations, the path that we need to go, the accountability, the communication that needs to happen, how we need to lead change. And my favorite, setting and achieving goals, that we can do that as an organization in which we haven't really done effectively, or in a collaborative approach, I should say, in the past. We haven't had organization-wide goals. And so we do now. And actually I'm going to a board meeting in about an hour to get them approved. So
I love it.
We're in the process, and it's going well.
So many good points there, Ben. The importance of that initiative champion and your support and relationship of that role. I served as an initiative champion in my organization for over 5 years. And I remember how important it was that I was the chief nursing officer, but that was a different role with my CEO than when I was the initiative champion. I mean, it's same but different. Like, I needed different things of his time and his support and resources for my initiative champion hat versus my chief nursing officer hat. And I was glad that he was available and supportive for me in those various roles that I had. And so that's really important. And then there's certain core practices like the goal cycle that it is going to take the CEO doing things like making sure there's organizational goals well aligned with the strategies, taking them to the board for approval, and all those kind of necessary actions. That really is your role.
Certainly. Yeah. And I really enjoy it. I love this, creating an environment where our teams can be successful. It's really rewarding.
I'm glad. And it's still early, and you're starting to see the rewards of this. And like I've seen time and time again, I just think that grows and grows. And so I'm so excited. When we start a new partnership, and this is still pretty new, is I always say I get so excited for them because I know what's on the other side of this, right? And you're making your way to that other side where the whirlwind comes down, the goal cycle gets humming, those teams get humming, the leadership practices start coming alive, the behavior standards start coming alive. And yeah, and the winners in that really is your community and the patients and your workforce and what happens to your organization in ways that it improves and grows. And so I guess that's the end game too, right? Is to remember, keep the end in mind, who you're serving.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And our patients and community will be better for it in the end.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And hopefully the families, this isn't also just, professional, but it's also, hopefully we can take some of these learnings and implement them in our personal lives. I think there's a piece there where there's opportunity if we just think about things a little bit differently.
You are so right. I was just at an organization the other day, and I was there for 2 days. And on the second day, one of the people that had been in the room on day one during the teaching, she goes, I went home and I taught my husband all of this. He owns a business and he needs to know this too. So she was like, was that okay that I'm like, pay it forward. So.
So that is the very same thing happened where I had a leader who came up to me and said, "Hey, you know what? We're going to implement, after we get home from work, we're going to talk about 3 good things that happened today."
Yeah.
Instead of complaining about the day and how work was so busy, is really
Yeah.
set the tone for the rest of the night so that we're not complaining. We're really focusing on
Yes.
moving on to the our personal lives and stuff, getting out of
Yeah.
the professional.
That's an early adopter for sure. So, oh, well, look at that. Time just flies when you're having a rich conversation like this, Ben, where our time's almost up. I'm wondering if there's any final thoughts or things you want to share to chronicle where you're at in your organization's initiative. If any final thoughts.
Yes, I would say to anybody thinking about starting an initiative or having a journey through Capstone is that you will see the benefits. We're already starting to see the benefits. I think it is a journey, as we've discussed. It will take time, but even 6 months in, we're in our orientation. I still feel like we're in an orientation
Yeah.
phase,
No.
starting to, but we're getting to the place where we are all on the same page as an organization. Our board, our senior team, our leadership team, we're all in the same place and we're moving in the same direction. And that alone is worth all of
Isn't it?
the time and effort in the world to make sure that we're creating an environment where our employees can be successful. So I'm excited about the future, and thank you to Sue and the team at Capstone for providing some guidance on this journey.
Yeah, our pleasure. It is why we exist. We exist to serve organizations like you through this process. And it is our greatest joy and pleasure and honor to be of assistance. And we appreciate the opportunity to do just that. And thank you for this extra time on a day when, you've got important things like get goals approved by your boards. So thank you, Ben, for your time. I look forward to our future conversations that updates others on how this is going for you and share some of your lessons and learning and successes with them. Thank you, Ben.
Yeah, thank you, Sue.
You're welcome.
Thanks for tuning in to Culture Change RX. If you found value in today's episode and you are a believer in fostering change in healthcare, join us in making a difference. Follow, rate, and review our podcast on your favorite platform. Share it with colleagues and your network. Together, we can make a lasting impact. Until next week, keep inspiring positive change.